What type of model railroad operator are you? Maybe you've had a model railroad for a long time and you really want to start operating it, or maybe you're getting ready to build one from scratch. Today, I'm breaking model railroad operator types into 3 basic categories to help you figure out the way you want to operate your model railroad. Today on Coffee and Trains. Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Trains. Before we begin, I'm drinking Donut Shop coffee and, as always, black with 2 sugars. So probably there are as many ways to operate a model railroad as there are model railroads. So let's say you're looking to actually operate your model railroad. You've been running it for a while and you want to get more serious about operations, or you're getting ready to build a model railroad and you want to design it so that you can operate it. Today, I'm breaking down 3 main types of model railroad operators so that you can figure out which category you want to fall into or that you do fall into. The first category I like to call fast and fun. This is a lot of just running trains. The track plans are typically built for constant running, so you have a lot of loops or dog bones or things like that where you're able to rail fan your model railroad. You may do a little bit of switching, but your railroad really isn't designed for that. It's really designed for having those long train runs or those speed runs or things like that. And people who want this type of operation genuinely enjoy running their trains and rail fanning them. That's the big thing. That's why they buy all their locomotives. That's what they want to do. And they're not overly concerned with realism, historical accuracy, but rather running trains. They may have a Mikado running right next to an SD70 and they do not care. And this is absolutely fine. You guys probably noticed by now that I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with that because you're running trains, and there's nothing wrong when you're running trains. And this is also great if you have kids that are not going to understand the nuances of operations and how specific you have to be with some of these. So if you are a younger model railroader, or you are a model railroader with a family that just wants to have fun with their kids and running trains, the fast and fun type of operation is probably the way you want to go. And people who enjoy this may also enjoy more of doing scenery than actual operations. So you may be into more of the building the scenery and making it look really, really good rather than building it around your track plan. So that is the fast and fun method of operating your model railroad. The next one, which is kind of like the middle of the road one, this is actually the one that I fall into, and I know that if you operate your model railroad, I feel like the vast majority of model railroad operators fall into this, and that is what I call the something to do model railroad operator. And what this is basically, it's someone who really likes how a real world railroad operates and wants to replicate some of that in their model railroad, which means they want to do some switching and they want to have some trains running that are realistic, like manifest and passenger trains and things like that, but they really want it to be more casual than really trying to go for accuracy. Their track plan does have some realistic parts, but may have a continuous run setup. And there's definitely, like I said, there's definitely more switching that they do on this rather than the fast and fun method. And there's probably some dedicated switching that they do where their version of playing with trains is probably they're going to go and sit there and switch an industry or a yard for an hour. And like I said, with the previous version, nothing wrong if you're running trains. And they're not really too specific on which car goes where. So if a box car that is marked with a different industry than where it's sitting goes there, they're not going to worry about that too much. This is really great for adults with older kids that can understand some model railroad operations, but really, like I said, don't want to get into the nuances of doing a realistic model railroad. And this is kind of where the balance is between casual and serious hobbyists. You're going to have a good mix of people in model railroading in this level of model railroad operations. You're going to have some people that are pretty serious about things. You can be pretty serious about the detail of locomotives without being serious about how the railroad operates in relation to a real world prototype. So you can be a rivet counter in this level of model railroad operations without worrying too much about the specifics. You can worry about how things look and not necessarily worry about how they operate. So And like I just said, you may be serious about different aspects of the hobby, but not just operations. You may be serious about electrical work. You may be serious about scenery and getting those things right rather than getting the operations right. So that's the something to do level, kind of the middle of the road of everything. The third level, which is really where you get into the people who like to model prototypes and just really have those phenomenal looking railroads that operate like railroads. This is what I call the reenactors. And this is where your layout design is a somewhat accurate depiction of a railroad, where you literally may have little, or I would say little, probably like giant dioramas of areas of a real model railroad, or a real railroad, and you may just take out the in-between areas unless you want to model a specific between area. Or you may do a freelance layout that is modeled based off of a real world railroad and is designed to be accurate to the way that a real railroad would run. And these model railroads are going to be run like a real railroad. They're going to have switching, they're going to have freight operations, they're going to have passenger service, etc. And you're probably going to have more than one person that operates these, unless it's a smaller version of the model railroad. If you have a big basement empire, you're probably going to need teams of 4, 5, even 10 people to operate these model railroads the way that the creator wants to operating them. And the person that does this really enjoys reproducing a railroad in detail. And this, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things to see, because it does take the most work. It takes the most research. It takes the most time. These are the railroads that it takes a good portion of a lifetime to build, a lot of times, if they're larger. And typically the people that operate these are going to be adults. Kids a lot of times will hop in if their parents are involved, but it's going to be definitely older kids into teenagers that are operating these model railroads properly. The younger kids can watch them, but a lot of times they're just not going to grasp the seriousness of the operations when you're talking about car cards, way bills, train orders, things like that. And these are going to be the serious hobbyists of our hobby. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with this. This is typically where, if something's going to come into the hobby on the bleeding edge, it's going to come into the reenactors first, because they're looking for something to solve a specific issue that makes their railroad be more realistic to the prototype. So when you're looking for new things in the hobby, a lot of times you're going to be looking towards those reenactors, because they're going to need it to reproduce something on their railroad. So a lot of new things and techniques and special techniques for scenery and that kind of stuff really come from this area of the hobby. People who enjoy this are going to enjoy making the railroad as close as they can to real life. I've seen railroads as specific as they are operating a certain week of a certain month of a certain year. And these are some of the most impressive model railroads that I have seen. I've seen plenty of impressive model railroads at all three of these tiers, but there are quite a few impressive railroads at the reenactor level. So those are the three groups of model railroad operators, at least the way that I see it. I know that there are more, especially when you go to specific scales that are more meant for running or more meant for operating, whether you're larger or smaller. Let me know what you think about these, if there's any other groups that you can think of, or let me know what group you are in. Let me know in the comments below. So let's get to some of the coffee or other beverages that you guys are drinking in this case. And this is the YouTuber's name. I don't have a temper, I'm just angry. It says water with Crystal Light Berry Sangria. LOL, always water, never coffee. Well, I can't argue with a little bit of Crystal Light. Melville Kitson says that coffee makes him twitchy, so I'm drinking an ice cold home brewed ginger beer. That sounds actually quite delicious. And Eric Coughlin says we're going to get one person drinking coffee today. He says the brew today is Urban Coffee Culture Black as usual. So let me know what coffees you're drinking as well in the comments below. Always fun to share what we are all enjoying on the side. So thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. They are listed right here. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. A lot of stuff going on there. A lot of sneak peeks of what I have coming up in the future. So, and if you're at the $5 a month level and you're a 3D printer, you get a model of the month to print yourself. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.